Thank you for joining me today. I'm Sandra at artypapercrafters.com, and my tutorial for you today is for these gorgeous little handmade note card and calendars. I'll just show you inside. I thought that during January and February that for my customers I would make them something special to thank them for their order. And so I came up with this little project, and I'm really pleased with it. There's a little notebook in here, and I've put it in so that you can take it out again and refill it. So I've made like a little piece of card that the notebook slides into like that, so that you can take that out. And I've covered the notebook so that it looks nice and pretty. And this little calendar, I've made a little folder for it, really useful. And this uses the penned and painted stamp set, which is here, penned and painted photopolymer. So it's a 3-step stamping, and it's really pretty. And then I put like a little pouch, a little pocket in, so that you could put little receipts or messages, whatever you'd like to. And I've decorated the front again with the penned and painted, and used the layering squares, and because I had it, the stitched shapes as well. Obviously if you don't have all these things you can still make them, but just improvise with what you do have. But I think they're really pretty with this silvery glittery ribbon, which I am sort of out of now. I've used so much of it, and I've done one in chocolate colours, but this one is slightly different because after making a few of these it was taking me such a long time, and I thought I need to sort of make more. I need to just maybe change up, so I made these ones which are slightly different, but I think they are just as pretty. And you've still got your pocket down this side, still got your notebook, and it's still decorated beautifully on the front. So I'll show you how we made these today, because I'm sure you'd love to make one. And of course, if you should buy any Stampin' Up products through me, you will receive one of these during February. At the end of February, I'll pop one of these in the post to thank you for your order. So let's crack on and make one of these. So I've already prepped up the pieces because there are lots of pieces. So if you want to write down the measurements now would be a good time to get a pen and paper. So all my pieces I have here. So for the folder part, and this is in Blushing Bride, this measures 9 1/4 by 8 1/4, and it's scored on each end. So you put it in your scoreboard, you score 4 inches, you turn it round the opposite side, turn it round the opposite side, score it at 4 inches, because this is just over 8 1/4, because you get like a slither over 8 1/4 on an A4 sheet of card. And so to save me cutting a slither off, I just went and scored at 4 inches either end, and then that's left me with that little piece to put my notebook in. So that's that part, the measurement. Then on the front of that is a piece of rich raspberry card, and this measures 7 1/2 by, no it doesn't, so rich raspberry, and it measures 8 3/4 by 3 1/2, and the DSP that goes on the front measures 8 1/4 by 3. So that's those pieces. My notebook, my covered notebook, my notebook measures 3 inches by 8 1/4. So the piece of DSP to cover that measures 3 inches by 9 3/4, so 3 inches by 9 3/4, that's to cover that. The piece of card that goes inside, that you hold your notebook, slide that in, measures 3 7/8 by 2 1/2 inches, so that's that. The little calendar folder measures 4 3/4 by 3 1/4, and you score that on the long side at 2 3/8, and that folds in half. Then I've got 2 pieces of DSP, one goes on the top and one goes on the inside, and they both measure 3 by 2 1/8 inches. The inside piece for my little pocket measures 5 1/2 by 2 3/4, and using a 2 1/2 inch circle punch, which I shall just get now. Using the circle punch, we're going to line that up and cut out a piece like that, and that sits on the inside. And then we'll go through these other pieces later. So then I've got my calendar, which I got from Amazon. It's just I got 10 of them for just a couple of pounds. And then I've got my layering square, and this is the 2 1/2 by 2 1/2 inch layering square, and my stitch shape frame that dies measures 2 1/8 by 2 1/8. And for my notebook, I've got a piece of Whisper White, which is 1 1/2 by 1 1/2, and my layering scalloped one is 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. So that's all the measurements. Now, should you have any problems with all these measurements and you get into a tizzy, let me know and I'll arrange to put them on my post. But other than that, I won't, because it's just so time consuming putting all these measurements on. But if you really are struggling, then I'll put them on for you. Right then, let's carry on and crack on with putting our little notebook together. So we're going to start off and we're going to decorate the front. And I've used my corner rounder punch because I like rounded corners on these. I think it looks nice. So that's the card. And this is the paper. And this paper is the Blooms and Bliss paper, DSP. Very pretty. So let's get some snail and stick that on. Stick that in there. Lovely. I think that way is up. Yes. And then some snail on here. Nice. So that's the front done. And then on the inside here, we're now going to put our little notebook. So what we need to do is we need to run some double-sided tape along these outer edges. Where's my end here? Here it is. Right, so some double-sided tape near to the outside edge. And then what I've done, I've taken the little cardboard backing, positioned that underneath like that, and lined that up. So that's about halfway, so you've got your little gaps down the side there. And then we take the backing off these, like that. Make sure our notebook is still right way up. And then I'm lining it up. She says moving it. I'm lining it up. I'm going to pull it down. I'm lining it up so that it's about I'll show you that closely now I've stuck it. I had to. Can you see you've got about ½ an inch there, and then that leaves you with about ½ an inch there. Okay, and as you can see that slides in and out quite easily so that you can change it. Pretty. And then we're going to decorate the front with that. So we've got our rich raspberry square there and our little handmade heart felt. I've stamped that in Blushing Bride, and that is that one there. And this is called Better Than Email stamp set, photopolymer. And it's all for all your handmade things really. It's really brilliant. Lots of little sentiments from my heart to yours. It's for you, better than email, inspired to create and share, hand stamped for you, handmade, can't beat snail mail, sharing creativity and inspiration one card at a time, and love is in the details, created in my kitchen. So you've got 12 stamps in there. So let's layer that up. And there. Whoops. And I didn't stick this on with dimensionals because I didn't want it to be too bulky when you was closing it. So that's that. And then we're going to fix our pocket on here. So we need some more double-sided tape for that. Around these outside edges. Peel that off. And then line this up so that you're about ½ an inch away from the bottom. And make sure that you're straight on this edge here, down this side. And then when you put this down, just try and put it down so that you're making like a pocket shape, like that. So you've got a bit of a gap, so you can stick some receipts or whatever in. And then that leaves our calendar. So what we're going to do for that is round our corners again. Same on the DSP, but just the bottom edges. Can't remember if I was putting that on there. Yeah, that looks pretty, doesn't it? So that goes on the inside here. So a bit of snail on here. And then I've just put a little bit, let me just bring you down a bit closer. I've just put a little bit of this wet glue and along the top here above the little stitching. So can you see that? I've just put a little double across the top above the stitching, otherwise it'll all ooze out into the calendar and we don't want that. And then line that up on there. And this goes on here, but first we're going to put some nice pretty little ribbon on that. So because I've run out, that's all I've got left of this pretty glittery ribbon, which is called Glitter Ribbon 3/8 of an inch glitter ribbon combo pack. And I think you've got sweet sugar plum and a silver one. Very pretty. So I cut myself a piece off there, like that. And then with a bit of fast fuse, something that's good and sticky, a bit either side, and then lay that down, bring that round the front, making sure that's straight, and stick it round there. That's good. And then we're going to stick this on. On the front. Like that. And that goes on the inside here. So I've just put a bit of, hold that on with a bit of fast fuse across the top. And I've just lined it up in line with the top of the notebook so that it looks good and in line with this. So that's that. Looking good now, eh? And that's the front. So now we're going to do some of our decoration. Do you know, that's annoying me now. Right then, so now we're going to do some stamping. So let's get the pendant painted out. And I haven't even set myself up with my inks, so what we're going to have, rich raspberry. And I think I'm going to have sweet sugar plum. Rich raspberry and sweet sugar plum. So let's get my blocks out and put those up. So I've used the larger ones. So these are the 3 that you need. And this one. So these are the ones that layer up together, the larger ones. You have got smaller ones, so that's your larger ones there, and they're your smaller ones down there. Let's open up our ink. Right then. Right, so I need to stamp 2 of these, so am I going to get 2 out of there? Just And we need our mat, because when you have photopolymer it's always advisable to use a mat. This is Stampin' Up's mat, cushion mat. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a piece of foam, and it's good. Right, so in the sweet sugar plum, and I think I might have stamped off. No, I'm not stamping off. Right, so you've got it like a little arrow there. Can you see that little arrow? Well, when you stamp that down, remember where you've stamped it, because that's where you need to line it up for your next layer. So that's the sweet sugar plum, and we're doing 2 of these. So I've faced my arrow to the right, so that will remind me that I need to do that with this one. There's the arrow there. So into the ink, and this is the rich raspberry. Line up with your arrow and stamp down, and that's your next layer. Pretty. Line up with your arrow again and stamp down. Gorgeous. And then this one, you see you've got your arrow there, so line that back up again and stamp down. Gorgeous. Lovely. Right then, I've got ink on me, so I'm going to get that off. Oh gosh, I've stuck my finger in that. Right, let's pack these away before we stick our fingers in them anymore. Right then. Oh. And you know what? I've just realised I was meant to stamp that onto the other one. Oh dear. Not to worry. Not to worry, I'll just fussy cut that out. So now I'm going to fussy cut these out. It doesn't take long to fussy cut these. Pretty stamp set this, very pretty. It's sort of penned and painted, reminds me of watercolouring, which I also like. Let's get that out of the way. That's it. Right then, let's get some dimensionals and bring back our lovely folder. So we're going to stick a bit of fast fuse on that. I was meant to stamp on this, but I made a boo-boo there, but we're just going to improvise, and we're going to stick our little flower on the top, which will look just as nice. So I'm just going to put that on flat as it is, like that. And we're going to put a nice little rhinestone on that into the centre, and then I'm going to stick that on with some dimensionals. Whoops. Got myself stuck up now. Right. And then that sits about there towards the top. Pretty. And then my little flower's going across there. And what I did with that was I used some Tombow because I didn't want too much dimension when it was closed. So a bit of Tombow across the top and bottom. And then that sits there, across there. Pretty. Another rhinestone in the centre. Nice. Close that up. And then to finish that off, I've got, because I've run out of my glitter ribbon, I've got this, which is Rich Raspberry striped ribbon. This comes as a pack of 3. You get mint macaron, Rich Raspberry and Delightful Dijon in the pack. Very pretty. So we want to tie a bow, so I'll cut that just about there. And then I've sort of gauged where the middle is, and I've put a line of fast fuse across where I think the middle is. Fold your ribbon that you've cut in half, like that, and put your thumb where halfway is, and then halfway across there, and press. Press. Bring that round the front and tie that off in a bow. And that is what I call pretty darn perfect. Pretty darn pleased with that, and I think that that is really pretty, and I hope you do too. So that is my tutorial for today, and here are my others just to show you. So thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed watching this tutorial, please would you like, share and subscribe to my channel, SandraR. Like I said, if you really need the project details because you're struggling, I will put them on, but it will be a labour of love because there are quite a few. So you could always watch the video again and stop and start it and write down the measurements. That would be helpful. Other than that, if you really need the measurements, I'll put them on. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. If you'd like to click over to Arty Paper Crafters for any information, or you'd like to shop online to buy Stampin' Up products, that would be fantastic. And I'll be back in a couple of days with another tutorial. So thank you. Bye.